Welcome to Moonbeaming, a podcast about lunar living, magic, creativity, tarot, and more. I'm your host, Sarah Faith Gottesdiener, and I'm so honored and excited to be here with you today. Hi, hello, hey, how you doing? Welcome back. I am your host, Sarah Faith Gottesdiener. I am very excited about this week's episode. This week we've got a great conversation with Keon, aka Keonce, creator of Millennial Soul Food. I wanted to read a bit about them. Keon, creator of Millennial Soul Food, is an IFA initiate, spiritual life coach and business coach, tarot reader, cultural sociologist, and digital strategist based in New Orleans, Louisiana. They grew up in rural Mississippi, where they cultivated most of their knowledge and experience related to their spiritual practices. A number of spiritual and occult philosophies inform their work, including, but not limited to, Christianity, Mississippi and New Orleans Hoodoo, and Buddhism. They are from a lineage of intuitives and learned to appreciate their gifts and how to season food from their grandmother. Keon is the founder of Millennial Soul Food, a web platform that they created to facilitate healing, as their mission's work is to help usher humanity into a higher vibratory state of consciousness. In their coaching and tarot consultations, clients work through emotional and spiritual blocks to facilitate personal and professional growth. How's that for a bio? How is that for a bio? Keon's bio has me feeling like I really need to update mine. Anyone else? I love Keon. Keon is so gifted, so smart, has such an interesting background, and we go everywhere and then some in today's conversation. Keon shares about what they learned through evacuating from a hurricane, what it's been like going through their initiation in IFA, and some of the philosophies and practices of that tradition. We speak about the gifts and the grief of ancestral healing as well. Keon also talks about the importance of discernment in spiritual spaces and spiritual imposter syndrome, which are in part going to be themes of a workshop they will be teaching through the studio at the end of the month. It's an online workshop, so you can learn with us anywhere. It's going to be great. So come sign up and learn with us. You know where the link is. Show notes, newsletter, website. I also wanted to know a bit about Keon's experiences in academia and how that relates to their role now as a spiritual practitioner and mentor. So we talked about that, what they learned there, and we also talk about one of my favorite topics. No, it's not kombucha, friends. It's boundaries. We talk about boundaries and spiritual mentorship and just boundaries in general. I really love that part of our convo. The other thing that was brought up for me through this conversation is how words, how language changes, how certain words lose their meaning or their meaning gets changed, and how so much language has been co-opted so that one word will mean something totally different now. And the reason why I say that is because we chat about the matrix and existing within it, existing outside of it. And when we use the word the matrix, we're talking about society. We're talking about maybe folks who don't see past the material. And a lot of times, like the movie, which of course is a metaphor for transitioning, that's what the Wachowski sisters later said it was. The metaphor is also one of a spiritual awakening. Sometimes spiritual awakenings are described as a waking up from the matrix. I would also add that there are a lot of similarities to becoming more aware and more educated about the systems we function within and how they influence us, right? Like how economics or capitalism or race or gender, how all of that affects our lives. The personal is political. We've all heard that memo. However, I have heard the Matrix used recently by the kind of spiritual New Age Q or Q adjacent, anti-vaxxer, anti-masker. And it's always difficult when a word loses its meaning. And of course, again, this happens all the time with many words. There are these words that have been used so much in the coaching worlds, in the spiritual industrial complex, whether it's words I myself have used frequently. Abundance, that's a biggie, right? We're always talking about abundance. Embodiment, no, it's another. Container, I feel like divine, divinity. I could probably be here all day, but these words kind of lose their meaning. It kind of means anything and nothing, right? There are so many others too, other words, right? Like I'm thinking of canceled or woke, which began in AAVE and are now like on the lips of right wingers on Fox News, right? So I don't know what else to say. I don't know what other words to use. Language has always been, a personal pet peeve of mine, how words change and language and meaning, etymologies, all of that. But I did want to mention that here just because it is like something I've noticed, and I'm sure you've noticed it as well. And we do use the term, The Matrix, which of course is also the title of one of my favorite movies, The Matrix. Go rewatch it. It actually holds up. I have watched that movie probably 4 or 5 times, and the original still holds up. As we progress, maybe things sort of get a little looser I think there's like 3 or 4, maybe it's a trilogy. The last one, the one that just came out, I probably have to watch it 1 or 2 more times. I'm going to withhold any opinion on it, but the original still holds up. Okay. On the note of language and words, a little content warning. We do talk about abuse. We talk about chattel slavery. We do not get into a lot of detail, but we do bring these topics up, not for super long. If that's not of interest to you, please turn this off, carry on. I want this podcast to be a space where we can talk about difficult things, where we can share thoughts about hard things, because that is reality. But content warnings are also important, and it's also really important to take care of yourselves. Okay. This is a good one filled with so many insights about so many other things. I bring to you my conversation with Keon of Millennial Soul Food. I am so excited to welcome onto the podcast a wonderful person, someone who I know you are going to adore, someone who is a full-time spirit worker, someone who is an intellectual, someone who has created a life of service for the collective through all of their gifts. Please welcome onto the show, Keon or Millennial Soul Food.
Hello, blah, blah. What's up?
Yeah. So how do you introduce yourself to folks when you're just meeting them or at a party or something?
Keon, say if you're nasty, you know? But I mean, I do say Keonce a lot. And then a lot of my friends say Keonce too. And people are like, oh my God, I love that. And it just works.
Okay, that's what I'm going to call you then, moving forward.
You know how Keonce was birthed?
No.
So I grew up in Mississippi, and the first time I ever went to a gay club was in college, like freshman year. And so we went to this like really seedy gay club in Memphis, Tennessee called Backstreet, rest in peace. It got closed down, but that night I was like just in it. It was my first time, I guess, going out to like a gay club and all that kind of stuff. And you know how you just get lost in the music? And then afterwards we were eating somewhere that's it's called Perkins. It's like a Waffle House kind of place. And I was like, wow, I just felt so like Keonce. And people were like, oh my God. And I just started using it. And now it's been like 15 years almost. Yeah.
That's so beautiful. I love that your chosen name is like dovetails with a really transcendent experience you had in queer ecstatic dance.
Yes, definitely. And I have to reel Keonce in a little bit, you know, because definitely Keonce was great for helping me meet different people, you know, in the parties and stuff. But sometimes I kind of have to be like, okay, we're going to go to bed at 8:30 p.m. tonight.
Yeah, I think we all have some alter egos that we need to sort of, you know, it's a devil year, so we're sort of recalibrating how all of that comes out, right?
Uh-huh.
So there's so much I want to talk with you about. And before we hit record, you shared that we spoke, just to give the listeners a little bit of background, we spoke about 6 or 7 months ago. This was the last time you and I connected. And you were saying that from then until now, so much has changed for you. I was hoping you could, if you felt comfortable sharing.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And of course, this is not to, you know, commodify an experience, you know, a hurricane and stuff like that. But I found like, I guess kind of like if you live somewhere where there's like hurricanes and storms and stuff like that, the timing is just kind of strange because the timing of Hurricane Ida was actually the day that Hurricane Katrina hit at exactly 16 years. So on August 29th, 2005, a huge hurricane hit, and then August 29th, 2021, a hurricane hit. And so I actually evacuated with my God family. So, you know, I'm initiated into E5. And so I kind of get anxiety with storms, but I also do a lot of storm magic. But sometimes the energy is a lot for me. And so, you know, my mom doesn't live here. She lives like 4 hours away. So sometimes I'll go to my godmom's house and stay up there. And so I was like, oh, yeah, I'm just going to go for 45 minutes. And then that wound up taking us 18 hours to like Florida. Wow. And but I think the whole experience was really amazing because I was with like 8 other people and 2 kids and stuff, but we like really made it work. And I think it kind of brought us together. And then also I guess the hurricane coming through kind of taught me about different things I needed to let go of in life. And I mean, I hope my ex doesn't listen to this, but I needed to let go of him basically because I was holding on to like a lot that was keeping me stagnant, you know. And then sometimes with the hurricanes, like, it kind of gives you an excuse to just unplug from everything, you know. So I was unplugged from social media, even though I was had like internet and stuff like that. It just kind of like really helped me figure out what I needed in my life and then what I really didn't. And then I had like a lot of shifts after that because I was afraid to come back to New Orleans because I was like, oh my God, this sucks. But then I came because, you know, it's like traumatic. And then New Orleans, as far as like the people who, you know, like the mayor and stuff like that, politically is very like underserved and like kind of terrible. But there's like something about the city, like coming back, it was like a revival. And I definitely had a bounce back. But it's just weird how like storms like happen like that. And it's literally like, so for us in Ifa, Oya is the Orisha of like change and storms, and like she's also like destruction, very like Kali energy. So it kind of just came through and like really blew a lot of stuff away. I mean, literally, but also like figuratively too for me. So
how long were you away from the city?
10 days.
And I feel like there must be, I mean, and like you mentioned, I think that I can only imagine, right? Storms are incredibly traumatic. I've only myself been in one hurricane in my life, and I have no idea, and it was very low level, and I have no idea what these larger tropical storms are like. I can only imagine that there's this real clarifying energy as well as like a real sober energy when you're so close to mortality and what you own and you know, like what you're leaving behind and the feelings of this moment of having your reality rupture basically and clear and take you into this moment of real extreme, you know, questioning, right?
Yeah, questioning a lot. And so, like I said, definitely it was a time when I kind of really bonded with my godparents, and then also got to bond with some of my friends and god siblings that were there. But it really kind of helped me, like I said, figure out what I needed and what I didn't. And then, it was kind of scary because, like, on the way there, you know, it's like New Orleans, so people be getting drunk and stuff. People were drunk on the road, just swaying like, ooh. I'm like, y'all, this is too much. But we wound up getting to Tampa, and the people were so nice. I went to this CBD shop because I was like, y'all, my nerves. And they gave me like a 20% evacuee discount. And people were really nice.
Gotta make that money.
I was like, y'all, I'm an evacuee. What's good? And I didn't even ask for a discount, but you know, and I literally had 2 white shirts. I had taken 2 white shirts up to my godparents' house, and we were like, oh, we gotta go. Because we also do divination to see like what the effects of hurricanes will be and stuff like that. And we did divination. It was like, y'all need to leave. So we packed it up and left.
Was your home okay?
Oh yeah, my apartment was totally fine.
I'm curious. Go on. No, go.
I did leave my car because I wanted something to happen to it so I could get in there. But
it didn't happen. Wasn't that strong?
That car is taking me through a lot. But, you know, your girl is looking for some new wheels sometimes.
Maybe we should X that part out. You're like, you know, I was trying to up level. The destruction comes new.
You know, that is a thing here. People drive their cars out to the street and be like, whoops, the flood came through.
Really? Oops. I had no idea.
Yeah, maybe not put that in there. I mean, if you want to, you can. But yeah, that is the thing. But yeah, my house was fine. Everything was totally fine. Even though the eye literally passed over where I live. Like, and I live like 10 minutes outside New Orleans. So it was very real. Just the timing was just strange. And and it was literally like maybe 4 months after I got initiated. So that has been a part of the first year of my initiation, which the year is anniversary is coming up in 5 days. I have to get a year for that.
You must have changed and grown so much.
Oh my God, yeah. There's been a lot. And it's so funny, I wrote about the eclipse that's happening at like close to May now. But I would definitely say my initiation has really helped me kind of even understand more about those things that I wrote about in the Many Moons Planner, as far as just like the darkness of life. And I don't like saying darkness, you know, because I'm dark skinned and stuff, but literally like just really deep existential themes of like, you know, living in a dystopia and understanding that, you know, climate change is real. The spaceship that we're living on right now, I mean, the Earth isn't in danger. We're the ones in danger. It's not really save the Earth because the Earth is still going to be here. Mm-hmm. So it was that. I think that is also kind of a thing that I really realized also. Like, climate change is like real, and the storms are real, and just like, I don't know, just being in a movement of like hundreds of thousands of people, you know, evacuating a huge city. It's like, it's a lot. And it's just a lot to think about, you know, living on planet Earth and having to move because of these storms caused by like, you know, environmental impact and destruction. So
you're totally spot on. And I think that I'm really glad you're talking about this also, because I feel like there's not enough talk about this because it is so huge. It's, you know, we as individuals can't control it, you know, and it's happening and it's real and things have to change really quickly. And I'm wondering if IFA has helped you navigate forces that are much larger than us tiny little humans.
Definitely, I would definitely say so. IFA in a lot of ways is very kind of like the Matrix. It's like a computer system, a computer divination system, but also just thinking about Orishas and stuff like that. It really makes me think about like how reality is kind of like a computer simulation almost. And in IFA, this is like the marketplace. So this is the place where your soul comes to like learn essential lessons, you know, of living in the 3D and being, but also being a reincarnation of different Orishas who have lived before. So yeah, it's helped me understand it in more of like the fact that there's like just different levels to reality. There's different levels where like souls exist. And this is kind of just where my like physical body has incarnated, you know, with the help of extraordinary forces and supernatural forces. But this is where I am right now to learn this lesson in the context of like the whole story of humanity. Because we have these, they're called odus, and they're different parables about different Orishas and just kind of stories about different aspects of life. And that really kind of helped me understand just life from a point of, I don't believe in complete neutrality, but neutrality is being like, okay, well, this kind of makes a little bit more sense. Like, can't really explain like why, you know, poverty exists or why war exists. But I think, yeah, IFA just kind of explains stuff from a human perspective, even like war and death and like pestilence.
They have a kind of reasoning for it.
Like reasoning, but also it's like historical and it's not really like wrapped up in, I guess like the way that like morality gets so wrapped up in like, this is good and this is bad. It's kind of like, you know, even with taboos, it's like, well, you're human, so you can't really be perfect. But there's a little bit more like leniency, and also the Orishas were humans. So it's like, you know, the Orishas literally go to war because it's like, you know, that's just an aspect of energy. But yeah, and even people who are evil still have like ashe. That's just like the nature of living in reality. It's like the duality of it, you know?
I see. So is it sort of like, I don't know, it's not my, it's not my practice, but I'm like zooming out and thinking about, and again, I know that there's some things folks aren't supposed to know, and they're just for those who are practicing, but just to sort of clarify, is it that it can help give us a much larger perspective, like I think about, we forget that just a couple hundred years ago, there wasn't the Industrial Revolution. We didn't have a 9 to 5 Monday through Friday acceptable work schedule, like, and we forget. I feel like especially people who live in America, because we're very much not taught to look backwards and not taught to understand like cause and effect and lineage and legacy, right? That's what whiteness does. It erases connection with lineage and legacy and ancestors and connection to land and memory and so on and so forth. Sorry, I'm on my little soapbox.
No, I'm loving this. Keep going.
And like, there's this idea, if we zoom out and we look at things through thousands of years, through these larger cycles, that maybe, say, someone who's in quote, not the best person in this lifetime, one, maybe they were someone different in another lifetime, in another time, and maybe in a way that is not victim blaming, in a way that is not, victim blaming. Maybe we learn by an encounter with this person. Maybe they were put in our life to help us heal or help us grow or help break our own pattern, or, and I also think of in our little lives, in our tiny little short lives, we're not good or bad. Like we behave in across a spectrum. So there's this kind of metaphor there as well, and this reminder, right?
Yeah, and this is a heavy subject, but it's even.
I know, right? We went right in.
It's even helped me contextualize chattel slavery, because if you know, Nigerians are the ones who Nigerians sold their own people. Africans sold Africans during the transatlantic slave trade. So for me, like, also my godparents are kind of like historians too. For me, it helps to kind of look at it as like people battling for resources. You know what I mean? Like, literally, it's groups battling for resources. And it does suck that slavery happened. Of course, there's like intergenerational trauma, all that kind of stuff. But if you look at it as it is like a storybook, basically, it's like that's just kind of like something happened, and that's a thing of like human ego. And that is also a thing of like, different people just have different inclinations towards whatever is like good or evil, or be more selfish. So it's not to say that it's not terrible, but it's kind of like, that's just a thing of how things work out in like the marketplace,
Do you mind if I ask you another question about Ifa philosophy?
Oh, of course. I've been thinking about this stuff a lot. I'm no expert either, but
You're a practitioner. You're learning.
I'm learning.
Now, of course, why can't I?
Oh,
now, of course, I forgot the thing I wanted to ask you about. Oh, yes. Does Ifa have this idea of the collective or the one? And then what I'm getting at is, I've been thinking a lot about this, about how one of the many reasons why abuse or violence happen, one of the many, right? There's like millions of reasons why, maybe not millions, but certainly hundreds, is that we believe we're separate. And so I believe that what I do to you doesn't have a bearing on me.
Mm-hmm.
And also, it's a lover's year, so I've been thinking a lot about this. if I believe I'm separate from myself, if I can't locate myself, then it's easier for me to inflict violence or to normalize harm on myself. And then that harm and violence normalizes. And then I inflict it on those around me, whether consciously or unconsciously. And if I could really understand, I'm saying like, I as a rhetorical I, if I could really understand that I am connected and we're interconnected, and what I say and what I do has an influence and has an impact, then that would slowly over time, if everyone understood that, that would dissolve conflict. Does Ifa have a philosophy around that?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I could bring up, like, let's say you're getting a reading. Sometimes the reading won't even bring you up. If I won't bring you up, if I will bring up, like, your grandmother and be like, something happened years ago. I don't know what happened. But the divine will be like, something happened, like, years ago with your mother and her mother, and there's conflict in this way. So it is very much so, like, kind of village oriented, and then also understanding the ways that like trauma can travel. But definitely, I think, yeah, as far as I guess if you think about the concept of Iwa Pele, so Iwa Pele is good character in Yoruban. And so we have these principles that we go by that are kind of like tenets for like good character. And so, for instance, like, I'm not supposed to gossip about other spiritual practitioners' work. There's also some other ones that are kind of like, what? But I don't do them, you know. They kind of like help, but they also, a lot of it is understanding how your energy affects other people, you know. So it's the way that you move in a village is very important because that energy affects other people. But also with being in a temple, like, because my godparents are like, oh, you're really hot, so this is what you can do. This is what you're good at, you know, and these are your gifts. And so they're kind of like really good at bringing people together just according to their different energies, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I think that's important to recognize, you know, everyone's not going to be like Zen. Some people just pop off. That's just their energy, you know. They just have, that's what they have to work through. That's a part of their blueprint for life. Meet them where they are, you know. And then also holding space for people to, you know, to grow and being not, you know, kind of trying to be tender but also stern. So yeah, a lot of that energetics is very, people are really aware of it. I mean, I think that's also something that I try to make, like, my mentees aware of, because I have like mentees and like kind of almost kind of like, because I don't want kids at all, but I love mentoring people. But yeah, that's also something I try to like talk about too. You know, like the energy that you bring into a room affects people in so many ways. You never know what people are going through. That one thing you do to somebody, that's why I'm also really particular about kids. I'm like, one thing you say to a kid could turn that child like upside down.
One thing, and you won't remember it, but that kid will remember it, and it will play out in their mind in ways that might influence or impact them. I've never thought more about energy than I have in the last couple of years, because I really started focusing on energetic hygiene. I really started focusing on my energetic field. I started focusing on my energetic drains. And energetic drains are sort of interesting to me because there's mental. I see them as the elements, right? So there's like air drains that are like mental. There is obviously water, which is emotional drains, and so on and so forth, right? It's not only, oh, I worked all day, or, oh, I had a really not fun interaction with someone. It's all these different levels and layers that we have to be aware of. And getting really attuned and sensitive and being able to tune into my own energy while also understanding that the energy of others isn't mine to take on, and it certainly isn't personal.
True. Oh my God, that is another. Yeah, that is a thing I have kind of been learning. I hope they aren't listening to this. But there's been several lessons since my initiation that I have definitely gone through, as far as me understanding my boundaries with relationships and understanding when it's not me being mean, but some relationships are just not friendships for me, but they're just mentorships, you know? And so I think as I'm getting kind of more mature, I'm understanding, like, you know, shit, we've been talking for an hour and I'm tired as hell. Armpits are sweaty, my back is sweaty, and you're like, whoa, I feel so good. Ah! You know, so I'm like learning, it's like, well, you know, we can talk and stuff, but I have to limit that interaction because I'm not even aware of the energy that I'm like interacting with, but I think I'm becoming more aware of it. So yeah, I think, yeah. And then there have been some instances, I'm not perfect, where I've had to kind of enforce boundaries, but looking back, I should have done it earlier, but it was just a learning thing. And the people that it happened with were good, but it was kind of like, it seemed harsh and out of, you know, unpredictable, but it was like, it just kind of built up, and I was like, I can't take this on anymore.
I totally get it. And, you know, energetic boundaries are so important. To that, I love that we're just like vibing and flowing right now. I have all these questions for you, but I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to vibe.
I'm feeling
The other thing, off what you were saying, is one thing I often think about, and it's a practice I put into practice in my life, is how different would our relationships be if, when we were in any kind of consequential extended relationship with someone, whether that be a coworker, a neighbor, a boss, someone you're dating, someone even you're just hooking up with, but it might be for a while, someone you know you want to be your good friend, you know? What if we just sat down and said, hey, what are your non-negotiables? What makes you feel safe? What makes you feel seen? How do you need to be cared for? What will you not do? What are your breaking points? What is anything that I should know in advance? What kind of relationship would you like this to be? We would not have all of this communication and projections and assumptions. Not everyone. I'm not saying we do this to the clerk at the Trader Joe's or, you know, the person we're walking past on the street. We don't have time for that. But the people we know, we're going to be around for any period of time, right?
Yeah, and I think there's something to say about that, and especially in spiritual community, because I have noticed sort of sometimes people who are in spiritual community think that it's like okay to bypass that kind of stuff. Like it's like boundaries don't exist. I'm not talking about any of my mentees, but I've just noticed in general across groups, you know, I've been in covens and temples, all that kind of stuff. Sometimes people use spirituality as a guise for like, oh, well, my boundaries don't matter. We're all family here. Being like, we're spiritual, but it's like, girl, we all need to understand we're all human and do deserve that kind of respect. But also sometimes I have kind of realized like some people just are not used to that. You know, they're too, like, I think people can get to that, like, I guess, level where they're like, you know, recognizing what their triggers are and what their non-negotiables are and stuff like that. But I would say like 70% of the people, you ask them to tell you that, they're like, or they would do some kind of projection, you know? And and yeah, and then I can always tell who are the real ones that, by how they respond to me, being like, well, I can't do this right now. Because I've noticed people either ignore it or they get real mad. It's like, it's like one or the other almost.
You are 100%. My personal experience has been that when I do set a boundary, those are usually the responses. And that's really telling, right? That it's like underneath the defensiveness is tenderness, is sensitivity, rejection. Rejection. And
I like that.
And it's really interesting because as part of my continued boundary practices, whenever someone sets a boundary with me or says, hey, I can't do this thing, or I'm not available for this thing, I always try to have gratitude for that. I always try to, not have my ego step in the way or make it about me, because I think part of a healthy boundary practice is respecting and honoring someone else's boundary. And if someone can't do something, that's them being honest and caring for both of us, because otherwise they would do it. They might get resentful, they might not come with their full self. And I only really want to be engaging with folks who are really a yes,
Exactly. Yeah. And I think it's just important for people to recognize that. And you just never know what people are going through. So even if someone's like, I'm going through some stuff, because it has been literally like, I'm like, no, I'm not saying you're annoying. I'm just saying I have too much, not even stuff going on, but I have a Capricorn moon and I'm a Capricorn stellium. So there's a lot of existential qualms and just inner conflict. And I'm like, I don't want to be an ass to you, So, because I know myself.
Your limits.
I know my limits. So I think that's also something I consider, because of course, if someone says they can't do something, naturally you're going to be like, oh, well, I'm not a loser. Oh my God. But like you said, it's really important to hold gratitude for people and also just hold space for them needing to have their own boundaries,
Absolutely, especially now when we are nowhere near out of a pandemic and people are feeling the effects of years and years of this. It's like you said, we don't know what people are going through. People are going through unimaginable stress, and to make any kind of assumption of anyone ever, it's not serving us, it's not serving them. So I love that you're bringing this up. I wanted to bring this up. I know that you were getting your doctorate. What were you doing?
I was. Yeah. I went to school at University of Michigan. I was getting a PhD, but I left with a master's for free. But
so you were super in academia.
Yes, deep. Like literally, I left to go to grad school like less than a week after graduating college.
You were like, let's do this.
Like, I'm gone. Also leaving Mississippi, so I needed, yeah. And then I was living in Ann Arbor for like 3 years. It's like very intellectual atmosphere. My undergrad was pretty intellectual too. Intellectual.
So this is what I wanted to bring up, because I've been feeling like recently, this is just like right now for me, what's coming up is there's a lot of stigmas around people who are spiritual practitioners, that they are not intelligent, or that they're, and you come from a background of intellectual rigor, very like high level academia. You think at, you're an intellect, right? And I'm really curious of any similarities you've had. Like, has your academic background helped you with the work that you do now?
Oh my God, yes, definitely. Whew. Well, oh my God, wow.
Do you find that like people make different, I'm so sorry to interrupt.
Oh no, keep going, yeah.
Do you find that people like they made different assumptions about you when you were in academia versus what you do now?
Not really, to be honest. I feel like people are just kind of like, oh, okay, I guess I could do that. But I guess I did sociology also, and then I majored in international studies in college. So it was all about, cultural studies and social and cultural identity and, nationalism and understanding his history and stuff like that. So honestly, I would definitely say my education has just helped me really understand the world. It's been like literally a study of the world, sociology, and my focus was in it was a lot of different stuff. It was pretty interdisciplinary, but I focused on social movements in college, but from the lens of how like economics and politics affect like movements and gentrification, creating like neighborhood spaces for various identities to emerge, but also racism. So yeah.
Wow,
So
you're just like, I'm gonna pick the most intense, layered, complicated subjects, and I'm just gonna jump right in.
Yes, that is definitely, my Mercury is in Aquarius in the 12th house, so I love to just like dive down the rabbit holes
And trying to figure it all out.
Yeah, I also really am into like science too. So yeah, I know a lot about like, I guess I don't know a ton about it, but like quantum physics, stuff like that. I love studying that. But yeah, my academic study has definitely just really helped me just understand more about groups of people, because I do readings and consultations for people from like around the world. And then also speaking Spanish and like traveling, it just helped me get in touch with like a new kind of energetic grid almost. I know what you mean, or you know what I mean. So it's
I do know what you mean.
Through studying sociology and then understanding other groups and then understanding how all these systems that humans have created intersect to impact my life. That's just, it's very spiritual for me.
I love this so much because there is such an intersection in terms of, we're always so raised to be, I'm just talking about those of us in the United States. And I also hate making broad strokes, right?
Yeah.
But I've noticed, I'll just speak for myself. I've noticed that there's this real individualism that is propped up. You create your reality, you create your circumstances, it's all on you. It's not about interdependence, and Lord forbid it's about racism or poverty or disability or 1,000-year-old social constructs that we're still limping around on as if, or we're still like carrying and beholden to. And the thing that I really always think about is truly everything is political. So of course, spirituality is also going to be political. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, yes. I mean, whenever I am studying different texts and stuff, and even being an Ifa, I have to understand Ifa in its own political context and, the ways that these different tenets emerged. And because, certain stuff is not really like dated for today. So I think it's like I have to kind of understand not only the spiritual aspect, but also like the context that a lot of this stuff emerged out of. So yeah, that's why I think it's important to understand like both sides. It's not just like spirituality. Do you want to go into like a spiritual group? You don't know the history of it. It's like, have you seen Wild Wild Country? You go to what, and you don't even understand anything about commodification of religion or the history of this group or even like colonization Well, I mean, can we talk? Let's talk about Buddhism. Buddhism, Zen, Buddhist colonization, colonized Tibetans. But I think a lot of people think of Buddhism as like, oh, but it's like, no, actually, a lot of different religions have been used for the guise of, taking people into captivity and for destruction, So, it's, I'm gonna just dive in.
I mean, the more you do research, I just think what you're saying is so important. And I think it's so important for us to be critical and to be contextual, because if we just take something at face value because it sounds good, and the truth of the matter is there are a lot of things that sound good or that are intriguing, and we don't actually understand the history, what's going on, who brought it over, what their motivation was. Is it in correlation with, its origin, how syncretism,
yeah.
Thank you very much. Changes belief systems, and what we believe and why we believe, and how our race or gender or geographical location influences that, whether we think about it or not. I think it's very, very important, which sort of brings me to one of the questions I really wanted to ask you. As you have this background of researching and learning about the matrix from a sociological perspective, and then researching and learning about the matrix from a spiritual perspective, what do you think can be some of the questions someone can ask themselves or be able to answer for themselves about some foundational spiritual practices, or when they're looking to enter into a spiritual practice? What do you think folks, again, from your perspective, it's just your perspective, what do you think folks should be thinking about and reflecting upon?
Well, definitely, I talk about this in some of my classes, but having a mission is very important. So what is your mission for spirituality? Is it to find like spiritual grounding? Is it to find out more about your cultural heritage? Is it to just live more calmly? Is it to be in community? Also, I think that it's important to understand, I guess, like your learning style. I do like a lot of witch stuff. So I talk about like, understanding your gifts. What are your gifts? Do you want to practice with other people? That's another thing, because sometimes people choose to be in more of a solitary practice, or they want to be in a group practice where they can feed on, like collective effervescence and all that kind of stuff. And also get, feedback from other people. So definitely asking yourself if you want to be in a group or solitary, looking at the, I guess like community, online community can be really important. But for me, I guess I can just use an example of how I use EFOD, but just figuring out what are the holes that you're trying to like fill in. Because for me, spirituality really helps me do that, especially with like, I'll use an example of burning candles. For some reason, I don't know what it is, but stuff just works for me when I burn candles. So I just started learning about burning candles and doing candle magic. I don't know what it is, but stuff just works for me whenever I do it. And it just works for me whenever I do like hoodoo or whatever. And it works for me whenever I think about the world in a certain kind of way. Whereas someone else, they might be, I also am into Pleiadians and star system beings and stuff like that. But other people might be more aligned with, another type of vibe, or like, maybe like more Aquarian vibe, star system vibe. So that also is kind of like what interests you intellectually. But for me, a lot of times also with spirituality, I think about like when I'm looking to heal. So how to heal intergenerational trauma, even, like how can paganism or connecting to more feminine modes of spirituality help you heal intergenerational wounds around, being a femme in society?
Sometimes for me, one of my backgrounds is I'm Jewish. And when I began to study Kabbalah, I was always really resistant to studying Kabbalah because it was so associated with sort of Western occultists who not never, these are all, harsh words, who I did not see talk about Judaism in the Kabbalah. Like it's sort of like it's sort of like reading Rumi, but not mentioning Islam. You're missing this big factor. And so I realized that. And so I started studying Kabbalah with a rabbi and also reading Jewish scholars, right? Which are a little bit harder to find, but for me personally, it was what I needed to do. And what I found is that I inadvertently had a lot of ancestral healing just by learning because for me, learning about a practice from my ancestors that is so linked to my bones is so affirming and felt like home in a way that I can't really describe. Have you had that experience with like hoodoo or?
Yeah, I mean, it's like I do a lot of kitchen witch stuff, and it's literally like you're in the same place that your ancestor was, like learning or engaging in these different customs and traditions.
Yeah, it's really beautiful. And it's also just, it's very healing. So I think even looking to your ancestry and doing some research and taking the time, because for me, like my first go round around Jewish mysticism I was sort of like, yeah, no, I don't think so. And then I kind of revisited it in different ways until finally it started making sense for me. And I think that only speaking from a personal perspective, I think some of that resistance might have had some trauma in it. And I think that resistance knew that there would be some grief involved in the reconnection. You just made what has that happened to you?
I'm just thinking about, I'm just thinking about stuff that we do these days in hoodoo is stuff that my mom's generation doesn't do, but then my great grandmother's generation did it. So it's like, it's literally that grief of like being like, fuck, this was lost.
Yeah.
And then being like, what if they had continued, totally.
I know. I feel like we're so much in that we're in these generations that is doing a lot of layered healing.
Yes.
And it's beautiful, and it is also filled with grief, and I can totally relate. I wanted to ask you, because you're going to be teaching a class through the studio about this, right? About like sort of how to approach spirituality in ethical ways and ways that resonate with your gifts, where you can be in integrity. And I'm also curious, in your experience through teaching and being a mentor and just your observance, of course, with all that Aquarian energy and from your sociologist goggles, right?
Yes.
What do you notice are some common challenges that folks have, or what makes folks, I loved you use the term, this is a term I've never heard before, so I'm giving it to you, like spiritual imposter syndrome?
Yes. I think, yeah. Woo. Well, I mean, in my class, I'm going to talk about this in the workshop I'm going to teach for you. But I think it's like really people have to look out for how people weaponize fear. Fear is like a main thing I have noticed across the gambit. Like, what is that? How you say that? Across the board.
I think so. I love how both of us in this conversation, we're like, we do have brains. We actually are smart. We have master's degrees, and we're like, how do you say that?
Gambit, but anyway, yeah.
Yes.
But I have definitely noticed. No, it's across the board. Yeah, across the board. But it is. I have noticed. Yes, definitely, fear is a thing. And fear is a huge thing as far as like people weaponizing fear to take advantage of other people, people projecting fear, or even confusing themselves because they're so afraid to step into a space where they're a little bit challenged. You know what I mean? So definitely I have noticed that. And that also kind of feeds into the ways that I talk to people about doing research with discernment. So it's important to, understand some core texts, before you venture out. And because a lot of times, if you look at a lot of spiritualists, and I'm not talking shit, I think people do this unconsciously too, but they throw out a fear kind of thing, or like, you're not doing this enough. When you were trampled down. So it's like important to, you remember when you were down and out. And it's like, oh, shit. Sometimes I see people, I'm like, bro, you ain't talking to me. I refute that energy. I banish it. I do a damn pentagram on them. But yeah. But that is something you have to watch out. You got to watch out for the codes that people put out. You know what I mean? And this is also, there's been so much Neptunian energy in the past, 6 months. And that all these scammers have been tricking people. You know what I mean? So it's like, that is how the spiritual imposters get money. Is they're like, oh my God, I saw that you need cleansing and your ancestors are speaking. But so I think it's like a fear that disconnects people from themselves, and disconnects them from their own thought process,
As you're speaking, I'm also thinking about fear or a belief that one can't do the cleansing for themselves.
Exactly. It's like that kind of stuff. It's like, oh, well, I'm not well, they must know better than I do.
Right.
When it's like, you live in your body every day. Not like I'm saying that there aren't people who are more receptive.
Of course.
But this is literally someone that's coming out of the blue in the DMs. And it doesn't even have to be the DMs. It could be someone walking on the street. Because I've seen people before. I was watching this person in Houston, actually. He looked like he was about to have a cult. Like, people were just, hanging out at 8:30 p.m. looking at him. And it was, interesting, the stuff he'd say to tag people in, But it's I don't know what his philosophy is. I mean, I'm not, he might be teaching some cool stuff. But I think it's really important, like I said, it's important for people to understand fear and then understand when they feel like someone's making them feel like they can't do something for themselves. Or even if they need to check themselves and be like, I know how to do cleansings. This doesn't make any sense. Right. And also, it's it takes time to, I guess, experience different aspects of spirituality. I think people try to rush it, I need a godparent. I need a mentor. You need to be my mentor. When it's whoa, you need to be, your guides need to be your mentor. You know what I mean? You need to be more with yourself. And if we call it your Ori, it's you need to get your Ori in alignment. You know what I mean? Because your Ori is the most powerful being in your reality. Your thoughts.
It's you.
It's you, period.
Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert. You're the main character.
Whoops.
Whoopsie. So that is what I do try to teach. I don't even like saying teach, because I believe we teach each other. But that's what I try to talk to people about. And especially as it relates to spiritual imposter syndrome, because it's a real thing and get taken advantage of really easily. So.
And you're going to share all of this and more at the workshop you're teaching later on this month. What are you excited about sharing with folks in the workshop?
We were talking about computer simulations. I mean, we're getting into it's going to be very Aquarian and Neptunian. I'm also going to talk about different ways to actually identify spiritual imposter syndrome. So really understanding the language that you use with yourself, self-talk, what's the language what are the thoughts that pop into your head whenever you meet someone that you think is more spiritually adept, quote unquote. And then also I'm going to talk about just some basic spiritual practices, not outside of meditation, but creating a routine, I like to do routines with the moon and the new moon. So I'm going to talk about a lot of different stuff.
I'm so excited. And this was just so fun, so wonderful. I absolutely adore you. So thank you for stopping by. And I'll see you at the workshop.
Yes.
Bye.
Bye.
That's our show. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Go check out Keon's work, get a reading from them, sign up for their Patreon. And if you'd like to learn more about the foundations of a spiritual practice, join me at their workshop later this month. Thank you so much for all your reviews. Thank you so much for supporting the podcast through our Patreon. Because of you, this is what I get to do for some of my time. And I'm so grateful and I'm so appreciative. Until soon, have a great week. Be good to yourselves and one another. Moon Beaming is brought to you by the Moon Studio. It is created and hosted by me, Sarah Faith Gottesdiener. It is edited by Rose Blakelock with a lot of additional help from Hazel Frew. It is supported by our beautiful patrons, which you can join over at patreon.com, The Moon Studio. If you would like to further support the podcast, you can sign up for a sponsorship. You can rate and review it or share it with your friends or on your social media. Thank you so much for being here. We appreciate you so much.